Zhang Peng shot out of the workers' passageway like a bullet, as blind as one too. The layout of the haunted house was complicated, and combined with the lack of lighting, several minutes later, he soon realized with a sinking heart that he was lost. Why are you stopping? Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you, I just want to do a small experiment on you. With both of his hands on the iron hammer, Chen Ji trailed behind Zhang Peng, slowly leading his prey into a dead end. Not going to harm me. The moment we met, you cracked my arm. That is what you called not going to harm me. Zhang Peng had lost his only weapon, his left arm was bleeding, his right arm was limp, hanging off his shoulder like a noodle. In that moment, he felt wronged, and the thought to call the police for help appeared in his mind. Listen to my advice, stop struggling and follow my orders, or you might need a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Chen Ji took deliberate steps toward Zhang Peng. He had no pity for the man after all, Zhang Peng was there to kill him. If he had not discovered that sooner, he would have been dead already? Boss, does that sound like what a victim would say? I must have been jinxed. Zhang Peng was completely defenseless, so he ran down whatever open path he could find. That pair of legs sure know how to run. Chen Ji continued to chase after Zhang Peng. However, several steps later, a sighing noise appeared in Chen Ji's ears again as a black shadow shot out from the workers' passageway. The mirror monster must have understood what was really happening by then, it knew this was the perfect opportunity. Zhang Peng raced blindly around the first floor. When he turned a corner, he saw a figure of a man waving at him from the corner of his eyes. Perhaps he was too scared by Chen Ji because he ran toward that person without a second thought. Chen Ji, who followed behind Zhang Peng, saw this and a chill ran down his spine. The figure was around the same build as He Feng, it was the mirror monster. I want you to live, but you insist on dying, that's a real ghost. Chen Ji's warning fell on deaf ears. Zhang Peng had reached the end of the corridor, and with the guidance of the figure, he wandered into the bathroom. The mirrors in the first floor bathroom are in pristine condition. Since it's leading Zhang Peng toward the bathroom, the monster is going to make its move soon. Chen Ji was feeling nervous since the crucial moment had arrived. He dashed to the bathroom and worked with the doorknob. It was then that he realized the door was locked. The development had strayed from his plan. The sudden appearance of the black shadow had ruined everything. It had managed to capture Zhang Peng before Chen Ji could detain the man. Ah! Several seconds later, an ear-splitting scream came out from behind the bathroom door. Then it was followed by the sound of stuff falling and crashing. Zhang Peng seemed to have stumbled across something really scary. What's going on in there? Chen Ji raised the hammer to crack down on the doorknob. The doorknob fell off, but the door still would not budge. Someone had used the cupboard to block the door from behind it. Unable to know what was happening inside the bathroom, Chen Ji was anxious as he swung the hammer repeatedly at the wooden door. Bang! 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 The loud noises could be heard even outside the haunted house. Chen Ji had depleted most of his energy before he managed to break the hollow wooden door. The cupboard behind it had started to budge to reveal an opening that was about half a palm wide. Looking through the opening, Chen Ji saw the black cloth that covered the mirror had fallen to the floor. Zhang Peng was staring at the mirror with his eyes unfocused, but the scariest thing was, there was a large black shadow standing between him and the mirror. The black shadow was slowly morphing until it became almost like Zhang Peng. It took one step back to allow half of its body to melt into the mirror, and then the weirdest thing happened. The dazed Zhang Peng walked toward the mirror. He pressed his face against the surface of the mirror. His body and the black shadow were slowly merging. About 4 seconds later, a creepy grin appeared on Zhang Peng's blank face. He slowly turned around and made sure to hold Chen Ji's gaze through the door and the cupboard. He swiped some fresh blood off his arm and wrote down something on the surface of the mirror. Another 1 or 2 seconds later, spirit seemed to return to Zhang Peng's eyes. He shuddered visibly before jumping out the bathroom window and out of the haunted house. The mirror monster has escaped into Zhang Peng's body. But does that thing have such a deep resentment toward me? Could it be because I've ruined its plan multiple times? The mirror monster had assaulted both He San and He Feng. Both times it had been interrupted due to an external influence. That was probably why the monster harbored resentment toward the owner of the haunted house, Chen Ji. The door to the bathroom was still blocked, and it would stay blocked for quite some time. Chen Ji quickly rushed to the front door, but before he could get anywhere, he could hear Inspector Li's voice calling. Chen Ji. Hang in there. We're coming to get you. Following a loud bang, the haunted house's gate was pried off its hinges, and several officers streamed into the building. Seeing this, Chen Ji immediately tossed the iron hammer to the side and removed his outfit and mask. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Inspector Lee was the first one to burst through the darkness. Seeing Chen Ji standing all alone in the corridor, he asked with concern, "Xiao Chen, are you hurt?" Chen Ji played into the skit as he staggered a step back and leaned weakly against the wall. He had his hand on his chest as he said, "I was shocked, but I wasn't hurt. Leave me be, go chase after Zhang Peng. I saw him jump out of the haunted house's bathroom window. Okay, leave the rest to us. Thank you for your help tonight. Don't mention it. To be able to help the law enforcement is my honor, what is a little risk or sacrifice? But you'd better not act so rashly anymore in the future, just look at how dangerous it was tonight." Inspector Lee's eyes were aglow with admiration and approval. He had his men chase after Zhang Peng while he stayed behind with Chen Ji inside the haunted house to examine the crime scene. He wandered into the staff break room first. When he saw the blood on the bed, he turned to Chen Ji with worry. "Xiao Chen, you're injured. Let me see." "That isn't mine." Chen Ji also didn't know how to explain it. At the time, the room was dark. The suspect probably accidentally hurt himself. Inspector Lee nodded. He used his flashlight to examine the knife marks on the bed frame and bed sheet, and his expression darkened. "You're not wrong. A man who is not familiar with knife work would accidentally slash himself in extreme stressful situations." He counted the visible marks and concluded, 17 slashes in total. "This is more than enough to pin him with attempted murder, this is the best proof." Looking at the knife marks, Chen Ji also felt a chill run up his arms. Inspector Lee pulled on his gloves and signaled for Chen Ji to vacate the room. "Remember to not touch anything in this room. Later, people will come to take pictures to keep as evidence." "Of course, I will provide my full cooperation." Chen Ji retreated out of the room and returned to where he had been earlier to hide the iron mallet before walking to the first-floor bathroom. He stood before the ruined door and wondered to himself, "If I'm not mistaken, Zhang Peng wrote something on the mirror, right?" After adjusting his position, Chen Ji finally managed to discern the blood message that was left on the mirror. It was another Arabic number 2. There was nothing scary about the number itself, but the fact that it was written in blood did up the scary factor slightly. What does this number mean? After the black shadow left last night, I saw a 3 on the shattered mirror and now it has become 2. Is there some kind of relationship between them? Why is the number decreasing? Chen Ji was at a loss. Could they represent some kind of countdown? Looking at the drying bloodstain, Chen Ji leaned against the door and started to contemplate. The mirror monster has already entered Zhang Peng's body, so there was no reason for it to leave this message behind unless it plans to come back for revenge. Chen Ji considered this possibility, but he couldn't confirm it. He knew too little about the other world and the mirror monster. Suppose the number continues to drop, what will happen when it reaches 0? A bad feeling rose within Chen Ji's heart as he paced around the entrance of the bathroom. Could the number be related to my life? When it reaches 0, my life will be over like those tropes in scary movies. Chen Ji stopped himself from overthinking. I suppose there's nothing else for me to do for now but wait for tomorrow night to arrive. If there's another number that appears around or within the haunted house, then I'll decide what to do. Chen Ji sighed deeply. All he ever wanted was to keep the haunted house his parents left for him alive, and if it was within his means, he hoped to improve it, but there just had to be these accidents that screwed with his plan. When he returned to the staff break room, several police cars had arrived outside the haunted house. The main city's investigation team had come to ask Chen Ji some questions and snap a few pictures of the crime scene before joining the others to pursue and capture Zhang Peng. Inspector Li accompanied Chen Ji, but even when the sun climbed up over the horizon, there was still no news of Zhang Peng being captured. However, Inspector Li promised Chen Ji multiple times that with the condition Zhang Peng was in, he would not be able to avoid capture for long, he would be caught within the next 24 hours. Honestly, Chen Ji was not that worried about Zhang Peng. He was feeling down because he was concerned about the number that had been left behind by the mirror monster. Inspector Li thought that Chen Ji was reeling from trauma, so he consoled him as best he could before leaving with the other officers after daylight. Chen Ji was left alone in the haunted house. He opened the window to allow the morning draft to caress his face. I'm the owner of a haunted house, the lord of ghosts and spirits so to speak, but how come I feel I am so pitiful? The morning rays filtered into the room. The ragdoll left on the bed turned as if carried by the wind and fell underneath the bed. Chen Ji picked it up and poked it on its tummy. The only specter who listens to me only knows how to act cute. In a real combat situation, I'll probably need to protect you. The ragdoll seemed to be unhappy with Chen Ji's evaluation of her. She tried to resist but could not do anything. The rewards from both nightmare missions were support skills. They are useful for the development of the haunted house but don't really help me personally much. Even though Chen Ji had no idea what the numbers meant, he refused to let himself be toyed with by some mysterious forces like that. Taking out the black phone, Chen Ji clicked through the app for a long time and realized his only trump card was the scary-looking red specter, Zhang Ye. When he was at the wooden hut behind Ping An Apartments, Zhang Ye had helped him once, tipping him to Wang Ke's presence. Technically, she had saved his life. However, during the nightmare mission, when the mirror monster tried to drown him in the bathtub, she had not appeared. This went to show how cavalier she was with Chen Ji's life. Completing her Bloody Heart mission will enable me to get her to do something that is not against her will. Maybe I'll be able to get her to help me deal with the imminent danger. Chen Ji clicked on Zhang Ya's name, and even his courage that had been cultivated from a young age started to waver as he looked at the bloody red interface. But this lady likes a dead Chen Ji. What if the affection level rises too fast and she can't wait for me to join her in the afterlife? Not everyone could accept a specter's admiration that easily. After exiting the app, even the air around Chen Ji felt fresher. The Bloody Heart mission will be my final resort. If the mysterious number appears one more time tonight, I'll have to complete the Bloody Heart mission. After making that decision, with a plan forming in his mind, Chen Ji fell back to sleep. Xu Wan came to work at around 8 a.m. Chen Ji left the haunted house in her capable hands while he went to purchase the surveillance cameras with Uncle Xa's money. He was in such a hurry because there were too many blind spots around the haunted house. It was too dangerous. On top of that, one of the Black Phone's daily missions was for him to install surveillance cameras and security devices. After the purchase was made, Chen Ji had the workers come to the haunted house that afternoon to install the devices. With him personally watching, the few workers installed the cameras in most corners of the haunted house with their hearts shaking, forming a surveillance web that had few blind spots. Even though Chen Ji planned to purchase listening device as well, due to limited funds, he only got the cheapest one and had it installed inside the Ming'an scenario. At 7 p.m. after the final testing was done, Chen Ji received the mission success alert on the black phone. Congratulations for completing the easy mission, reward earned, background music, wedding dress. Note, wedding dress is the perfect accompaniment to Ming'an. The Ming'an scenario's scream factor has been upgraded to 1 star. Chen Ji was surprised when he saw the phone alert. The original scream factor for Ming'an was only 0.5 stars, but with this new music, it was upgraded to 1 star. Looks like this music is even more disturbing than Black Friday. Wanting to immediately try it out, Chen Ji played the music. It was a completely different style from Black Friday. One was a slow insidious burn, like a force slowly dragging the listener into the dark abyss. The other was weirder in nature, a mix of wedding music and funeral music. The new track caused Chen Ji's skin to crawl from the first note alone. It does fit the Ming'an scenario perfectly, but constant exposure to it will probably cause unwanted psychological trauma. Unless someone comes to challenge the haunted house, I'd better keep it to myself for now. Chen Ji saved wedding dress to his own phone before returning to the 3rd floor alone to clean up the place. He did not have enough funds to hire cleaners, so with the doll snuggled in his pockets, he cleared out all the mirror pieces he could find on the 3rd floor. When he was done, it was almost midnight. Chen Ji held his phone as he wandered between the bathroom and the staff break room. He looked at the mirrors carefully as he waited for midnight to arrive. With dark circles under his eyes, Chen Ji stood before the mirror hugging the dolls. 1 more minute until midnight. The lights in the bathroom were off and Chen Ji stared at his reflection in the mirror. Afraid that he might miss out on some details, Chen Ji did not dare to blink with his palms on the sink and his face close to the mirror. He focused all of his attention on the mirror. When there were only several seconds away to midnight, the phone in Chen Ji's pocket vibrated. A call. Who would call at such a time? The sudden phone call startled Chen Ji. He hurriedly pulled out his phone and the caller ID was Inspector Li. Has there been some kind of accident? Chen Ji answered the call and put the phone beside his ear. Uncle Sanbao, have you got an update? On the other end of the phone, Inspector Li sounded serious and hurried. Zhang Peng is still on the loose, but we've come to the conclusion that he's still around Western Jiujiang. You have to be careful. The man is incredibly dangerous and cunning. His actions and thinking are different from normal, and we cannot rule out the possibility that he will return for you. But didn't the police set up a perimeter around New Century Park yesterday? With injuries on both of his arms, he shouldn't have been able to get far. From Chen Ji's perspective, he had been sure Zhang Peng was going to be captured. There was an unexpected development. For now, I cannot give you the details, but what I can say is, last night one of the officers who managed to intercept the suspect experienced some kind of trauma. He's currently in a deep coma and being looked after at the hospital. What? Chen Ji's expression shifted, and he was about to say something when he glanced at the mirror on the wall out of the corner of his eye. A bloody Arabic number of 1 had surfaced on the mirror when he was not paying attention. But don't worry, the police are closing in on him. Justice always prevails. Inspector Lee continued to talk on the phone, but Chen Ji's mind was already elsewhere. He placed the phone down and looked at the mirror dumbly. When did this appear? The mirror monster has already left, so why would the number still appear on the mirror? Chen Ji was reminded of what he had seen in the bathroom the day before, where half of the mirror monster's body was outside the mirror and Zhang Peng had voluntarily walked forward to merge himself with the creature. What does this number really mean? Yesterday it was 2, and today it is 1. Does this mean it'll become 0 tomorrow? The dropping number caused Chen Ji's eyes to dim with concern. After Zhang Peng was possessed by the mirror monster, the number started to drop. When Inspector Lee mentioned the coma of the officer, the number dropped again. Does the number represent the number of victims? The mirror monster needs 3 living victims. Regardless of the real meaning of the number, Chen Ji could not wait anymore because it was now related to innocent lives. A great sense of urgency appeared in his heart. The mirror monster is growing stronger and stronger. Tomorrow night might be my last chance already. Chen Ji picked up a dirty cloth to wipe the number on the mirror away. He could not play it safe anymore. After a few more words with Inspector Lee, he ended the call and then entered the props room with the black phone. It is now a new day. The daily missions will have refreshed already. Now, the only thing that might help me are the Red Spectre's Bloody Heart mission or the new Nightmare mission. Chen Ji tapped into the daily mission interface of the app. Easy mission. A normal haunted house experience should not create permanent trauma to its visitors. I hope you understand this simple theory. Please improve the haunted house's security by inspecting the security threats hidden around the haunted house. Normal mission. You've achieved the criteria to enable the first expansion of the haunted house. Do search for a suitable location soon. Due to space limitations, you are unable to perform any trial mission to unlock scenarios. Nightmare mission. There has always been a second occupant inside your room. Wouldn't you like to meet said person? Beware. The more difficult the mission, the more dangerous it'll be, so please choose carefully. After reading all 3 missions, Chen Ji's eyes fell on the nightmare mission. The other person inside my room. Just the description of it makes me uncomfortable. Chen Ji knew the possible danger of the nightmare mission perfectly well. After a long hesitation, he chose to open the Red Spectre's page instead. Are you sure you want to accept Zhang Ya's Bloody Heart mission? Warning. This mission contains a certain level of danger. The app kindly provided Chen Ji with a warning. He rubbed his temples, unable to come to a decision. Both of these missions have a certain degree of risk and danger. However, the rewards of the nightmare mission are random. There's a high chance it might just give me another supportive skill. In comparison, the Bloody Heart mission, Zhang Yu has been given the special title of Red Spectre and even her own personal page on the app. This means that she is probably a powerful spectre, at least several levels higher than the mirror monster. With her help, I should be able to survive this crisis. After thorough analysis, with a grit of his teeth, Chen Ji clicked on Zhang Ya's Bloody Heart mission. Are you sure you want to accept Zhang Ya's Bloody Heart mission? Yes. The red interface started to change and peel off like wilting roses, and soon a new message appeared on screen. Andersen's Fairy Tales Volume 1, Book 3, Red Dancing Shoes. Once upon a time, there was a pair of ruby red dancing shoes that could make the dancer who wore them light on her feet and perfect at her dance. However, none of the dancers dared put them on because they were a pair of magical shoes, one that would make its dancer keep on dancing until they perished from exhaustion. Please arrive at Western Jiyu Zhang's private academy within 1 hour from accepting the mission and locate Zhang Ya's red dancing shoes before dawn. Warning, don't be late on your first date, or she'll be very unhappy. Chen Ji did not know what to feel after reading the mission details. The private academy had been abandoned several years earlier due to unknown reasons. However, Chen Ji had heard plenty of scary rumors about it. My first date with a girl is at an abandoned school after midnight. Am I that unlucky at love? The mission required him to be at the private academy within 1 hour. Chen Ji calculated the distance in his mind and realized he still have some time left. The private academy is at this part of town, so not that far away from me. The biggest issue is going there after midnight. Sigh, I'd better go take a bath first, no matter what, this is my first time. After a quick shower, Chen Ji changed into a clean outfit. He stood before the mirror to inspect his image. There are 50 minutes left, why am I feeling so nervous all of a sudden? After taking a few deep breaths and splashing cold water on his face, Chen Ji finally calmed down. It's time to go. Chen Ji retrieved the backpack that he had used last time and placed Zhang Ya's love letter, a power bank, and tool mallet into it. After the lesson from last time, he put the penknife directly in his pocket and the doll left behind by his parents inside his shirt pocket. He was bulging all over the place, but at least he felt safer. After packing everything he needed, Chen Ji locked the haunted house and rushed out of New Century Park. It was 12:15 a.m., so there was little traffic on the road. He waited for another 10 minutes before he managed to hail a cab. Sir, please get me to Western Jiuzhang's private academy. I'm in a hurry, so please drive faster. No problem, get in. The driver was an easygoing middle-aged uncle, and the radio in the car was playing hit songs from the 90s. Chen Ji sat in the back seat and used this downtime to search for online information related to his current mission. The first thing mentioned by the phone when he accepted the Bloody Heart mission was Anderson's red dancing shoes, so that was the first thing Chen Ji looked for on the internet. He managed to find the original source, and after skimming through it, Chen Ji felt rather petrified. The original plot was not much different from the Black Phone's version. It described the story of a young girl who was gifted a pair of beautiful red dancing shoes. She loved them so much that she wore them everywhere, including to church, where she was cursed to dance forever. She was afraid, helpless, and exhausted. In the end, she begged the woodman to chop her legs off, and then came the most curious part of the fairy tale. After the legs were chopped off, they danced away into the forest still wearing the red dancing shoes. Is this even a fairy tale? It added to his nervousness since his mission was searching for Zhang Ya's red dancing shoes. When I won the cursed love letter, the Black Phone did provide a brief description of Zhang Ya. She was wearing a bloodied school uniform and red dancing shoes at the time of her death, so could the fairy tale be real? The red dancing shoes couldn't be taken off after they were put on. Chen Ji's skin crawled. Different from his previous missions, this time he was going face to face with a red specter, one that had a bloody heart mission, something that could only be given by specters with heavy resentment. Looks like the key to tonight's mission is the red dancing shoes. Chen Ji read the fairy tale again for a few times. The main lesson to be learned here was to not be vain but be humble at all time. Was there even a reason for the Black Phone to refer to this fairy tale at the start of the mission? He could not figure out an answer, so he decided to focus his energy on searches related to Western Jiuzhang's private academy. The school was closed after just 2 years of operation and had been abandoned since then. With regards to the reason for its closure, there were plenty of rumors online. Some said it had to do with lack of budget, whereas others complained about the high semester fees. Chen Ji scrolled through all the information patiently, and Zhang Ya's name did not even appear once, like she had nothing to do with the school at all. There has to be something more sinister about the closure than what's been speculated online. Chen Ji looked at the streetlights out the window that seemed to be running backwards, and he squinted his eyes and thought. Just what kind of ending could a girl experience to turn her into a red specter? Why would she harbor such deep resentment? What does all of that have to do with red dancing shoes? While Chen Ji was deep in his thought, the volume of the radio picked up. He turned toward the source with shock and realized the driver uncle had been looking at him via the rear view mirror. What's on your mind, young man? You have such a sad face. The driver was a quintessential chatterbox. He had attempted to start a conversation with Chen Ji when Chen Ji entered the car, but Chen Ji had ignored the man mostly because he was busy looking up information. So much has changed in my life recently that I'm struggling to get my head around it, feeling rather swamped at the moment. Chen Ji smiled politely as he put his phone away. Slow and steady wins the race. I'm sure everything will work out in the end. If you're that stressed, do what I do, play some disco music, and after a few shakes, you'll feel much better. The driver grooved along to the music. At least the man is optimistic, thought Chen Ji. By the way, why are you going to the private academy so late at night? That place is mostly abandoned, and it's not close to any residential area. Chen Ji's lips fell open and eventually he answered, going on a date. A date. At this kind of ungodly hour. The driver glanced back at Chen Ji. It's true. I don't know how to explain it, the girl is a bit hard to please and has some weird quirks. Chen Ji tried to normalize it as best as he could. After all, he had not been asked out on a date before, and being invited to one did make him feel quite good about himself. That's a good thing. What are you worried about, worried that she won't like you? Then again, what kind of person goes to a date dressed like you? Listen to me, even guys need to know how to dress these days. Look at that backpack, it goes against the rest of your outfit. The floodgate of the driver's mouth had been opened, and Chen Ji did not even know how to respond. A normal person going on a date would have been happy and overjoyed, but his date was more like a coercion and a desperate move to save himself than an actual date. A gentleman mustn't be too forward, don't start the conversation with random topics like the weather, compliment her, and be a good listener. After all, the first impression is very important. Listening to the driver's advice, Chen Ji had half a mind to play wedding dress on his phone so that everyone could have a little peace and quiet. The taxi zoomed through the night. The cars on the road and the buildings beside it had gotten increasingly sparse, even the streetlights had started to disappear. The signs of civilization outside the window started to disappear, and the road was slowly swallowed up by the forest. The driver glanced at the GPS and asked Chen Ji, "Are you sure you got the right address? Other than an abandoned school, there's nothing down the road." "Yes, I'm sure, just drop me off near the school." "How much?" 19. Do you mind paying me via WeChat? I just started my shift, and I don't have spare change on me." "No problem." As Chen Ji grabbed his phone out of his pocket, the penknife bounced out of it as well. The knife sat quietly on the cushion, causing the driver who spotted it to lean surreptitiously forward. The driver moved his hand to lower the volume of the radio. As he did so, he stealthily used his pinky finger to press a button on the machine. None of this escaped Chen Ji's eyes. However, there was nothing he could do but continue to smile. He believed the uncle had mistaken him for some kind of late-night burglar. Transaction successful. Chen Ji put away his phone and glanced at the driver's seat. "Uncle, you're recording this to report to the police." The driver, who was in the middle of drinking from a bottle of water, coughed violently as he waved his hands about vehemently. "I can understand why you're doing that, but..." Chen Ji turned to look at the eerie outline of the school in the dark. "I'm really here for a date." The driver's face was pale, and he laughed awkwardly. "Then, good luck to you." "Thank you, so do you mind stopping the recording now?" Chen Ji flashed a smile that he thought was friendly. "This is just a misunderstanding." "Of course," the driver answered readily. He pressed some random button on the machine. After driving for another 2 or 3 meters, the red light on the driver's walkie-talkie lit up. He pressed it lightly, and before he could say anything, a rough, gravelly voice appeared. "Lao Lu, you're also near Western Jiuzhang's private academy. What is wrong with people tonight? I also have a passenger with me who wants to go there. Actually, we're quite close. By the way, what is this message that you sent to the group?" "I am mailed postage." "It's nothing, just focus on your passenger." The driver swiped the sweat on his forehead away and quickly hung up on the walkie-talkie. "That should be 'I am held hostage,' right?" "Uncle, didn't you say you trust me?" Chen Ji asked with his eyebrow raised. Afraid that the driver uncle might just call the cops on him, he said, "You can drop me right here." "Yes." The driver was quick to follow his instruction. Chen Ji even managed to see that the man's legs were shaking. Chen Ji looked around to make sure he did not leave behind anything. After he got out and closed the door, he looked up and saw the running sign on top of the taxi say, "I am being held hostage, please call the police." "Uncle, you sure are creative." The taxi left Chen Ji like it had grown wings. Several seconds later, the several hundred meters around Chen Ji fell silent. It was a starless night, like it was going to rain soon. The rain clouds were hanging low in the sky, blocking out all light. Chen Ji pulled out his phone to look at the time. There were still 8 minutes left until the designated time. Just now, inside the car, the person on the walkie-talkie said he's also bringing a passenger to the private academy. "That person is coming here at 1 a.m., could it have something to do with me?" Chen Ji reminded himself to be careful. If not for the time limitation, he probably would have hidden himself in the brush by the side of the road to see who was following him. Only 8 minutes left. I'd better go familiarize myself with the layout of the school first. I'll need all the advantages I can get. The area surrounding Western Jiuzhang's private academy was a piece of deserted land. There were no streetlights, only a single road cutting through heavy forest and shrubbery. Flipping on the flashlight on his phone, Chen Ji followed the road for another 100 meters before reaching the abandoned school's front gate. The chains and the iron bars had already rusted together. The gate was too heavy to even budge. Looking through the bars, all Chen Ji could see was darkness. "How do I get in?" Chen Ji paced around the gate. He tossed his backpack over the gate first before taking several steps back. With a running start, he grabbed hold of the bricks on the wall as he jumped over the outside wall. The school compound was not big, the whole area could be seen with one glance. There were several tall silhouettes standing in the dark like solitary watchmen. The school sign had long since been removed. Chen Ji himself did not know what the real name of the school was. Like everyone else in the city, he only knew it as Western Jiuzhang's private academy. The overgrown shrubbery had swallowed up most of the path. It scratched Chen Ji's legs at every step, making him feel both ticklish and painful. I've managed to arrive within the designated time limit, now my mission is to find Zhang Ya's red dancing shoes. Chen Ji pulled out the mallet from his backpack. Feeling the icy metallic touch on his skin, Chen Ji felt much safer. Using his phone as guidance, Chen Ji walked deeper into the school. He only took several steps before he felt something was wrong. He stopped moving and took several steps back. Is it my imagination? How come it feels like there is something pushing me into the school? And when I tried to walk backwards, there was a mysterious force blocking me from behind. Chen Ji turned to look over his shoulder, but there was nothing there. He used the phone to shower some light behind him, and there was nothing like ghost or spirit as he has imagined. Could it be that she's already here? Standing behind me. Only I can't see her. Chen Ji shivered. The thought of swinging the mallet at the space behind him cropped up in his mind, but he thought, what if Zhang Yu is really behind me and the swing angers her? He was a mere haunted house owner, he was practically defenseless stranded in this deserted school. He shuddered, thinking about the ending should he manage to anger a baleful specter. In any case, I should go in first. Chen Ji pulled his backpack higher as he walked into the school holding up his phone and the mallet. The night darkened, and a draft picked up, it even carried a light dusting of rain with it. The most probable locations where I will find the red dancing shoes are either the female changing room at the dance studio or Zhang Ya's former bedroom. I'll have to focus on these two locations. Chen Ji headed toward the building that was closest to him. The trees inside the school had grown into twisted shapes, and the wild grass had grown up to Chen Ji's waist. There were statues that littered the school compound, and most of them were human figures. All in all, the place radiated an air of eeriness in the dark. The girls' dormitory. The dormitory building was not tall, only 4 stories high. However, it did look creepy, probably due to an extended period of abandonment. The glass door of the building was locked up tight using a metal chain. Chen Ji leaned against the glass to take a closer look. The doors on both sides of the dark corridor were tightly closed, but curious enough, a solitary chair sat in the middle of the corridor facing away from the bedroom door. A single chair is left right in the middle of the corridor. Is there some special meaning to this? Chen Ji leaned back from the glass door. Both the main gate and the hostel entrance have been locked, and the corridor doesn't seem to have any trash in it. This goes to show that when they were closing the school, they cleaned the place up first, so why did they leave a chair right in the middle of the corridor? Just a mere coincidence. If the chair was purposely left behind by the school management, then what is the meaning of it? If it was not left behind by the school, then who moved the chair to the middle of the corridor after the place was locked up? Chen Ji aimed his phone at the glass door. The chair was placed around 5 meters away from the entrance, and there was a broken hall light right above it. The light is already broken, and the electrical wiring is even exposed. Chair and wiring, is it me or that looks like a hanging scene? Honestly, after seeing this curious scene, Chen Ji's heart had started to palpitate. I'm probably just overthinking. He looked left and right. The breeze caused the leaves to rustle. The school after dark was hauntingly creepy. I can't scare myself for no reason. After all, Zhang Ya, the Red Spectre, is the scariest presence at this school. I have her love letter, so who dares to challenge me considering the situation? This was the only way Chen Ji could console himself. Furthermore, this is just an affection mission. To put it simply, it's a special kind of date. There's nothing to be worried about. He gave himself a pep talk, and when he was done, he walked back toward the glass door with the mallet. He was about to smash the door when his eyes caught a shocking detail. The chair that should have been right under the hall light had moved 1 meter away from the light fixture. It seemed to have moved forward. FCK. This was the first time Chen Ji experienced something like this. What just happened? Staring right at the wooden chair in the middle of the corridor, Chen Ji stood at the ready, gripping the mallet tightly. He waited for 10 seconds, and the chair remained unmoved. Is it because I'm watching it? Chen Ji walked forward and turned on his phone's recording function before cradling it within the chains on the door. Then, he walked back to the abandoned garden outside the building and waited patiently. The school at midnight was unsettlingly quiet, there was not even the sound of a bird or insect chirping. About 3 minutes later, Chen Ji returned to the dormitory. He had prepared himself for the worst. However, when he stood at the glass door, he saw that the chair was still where it was, just 1 meter away from the broken hall light. Didn't move. What's going on? Chen Ji walked to the door and picked up the phone from the chain. He looked through the video and saw nothing out of the ordinary. The chair sat in the middle of the corridor just as it should. It'll only move when it's around a living human. When the thought appeared in his mind, Chen Ji instantly felt something was wrong. He turned to look down the corridor, and the chair had moved 2 meters ahead again. It was now incredibly close to the glass door. It moved forward again. What does that mean? It only moves when I am close. Does this mean it wants something from me? It would have been a lie to say he was not afraid, but Chen Ji's tolerance for fear was much higher than most, so he managed to maintain a clear mind under such situation. The school is clearly haunted, but before I understand why, I should try my best to avoid these things. Chen Ji actually wanted to smash the glass door and rushed in to bash the chair into pieces. However, considering the blind spots inside the building, he was afraid there were threats hidden in corners that he could not see. He was afraid that after entering the building, it was not the chair that would snap but himself. Tonight's main mission is to locate that pair of red dancing shoes. As long as this weird stuff doesn't interrupt with my progress, there's no reason for me to interact with it. Chen Ji grabbed his phone and retreated from the door. I'd better go investigate other places first. I can always return if I can't find the dancing shoes. After all, the mission is considered successful as long as I locate them before sunrise. There is still plenty of time. Chen Ji committed the location of the girls' dormitory to memory before retracing his step back to the school gate. He switched his phone off and squatted near the main gate, holding the mallet in his hand. Based on the time, the taxi behind me should have arrived already, so why is the road still so dark? A car's headlights would be extremely eye-catching against the total darkness, but Chen Ji waited for a long time without seeing any source of light heading toward the school. Could there have been an accident? This detail had not left his mind. Chen Ji knew there was no such thing as coincidence in this world. The person who followed him to Western Jiuzhang's private academy had some motive of their own. The opponent probably knew that I would wait for them, so they came out from the car earlier and walked the rest of the way on foot. If that's the case, then this is troublesome. Chen Ji wished that he was wrong. He already had more than enough on his plate as it was. In any case, I'll need to pick up pace. I have 2 advantages on my side. I familiarize myself with the surroundings since I got here first, and I have Zhang Yi on my side. She won't watch me get bullied on her home turf, right? Perhaps Chen Ji's eyes had gotten used to the darkness, or maybe it was the effect of the yin-yang fission, but things were no longer that blurry in the dark. Those in the light opened themselves to being hunted by those in the dark. Chen Ji did not turn on his phone but headed toward another building in the dark. The tallest building in the school was the education building. It was 5 stories tall, and behind it was a field that was unkempt and overgrown. On the other end of the field was a building that sat itself apart from other buildings. The building stood out because it had faded red paint. The education building is for classes, so the dancing shoes won't be there. The possibility is even lower for the boys' dormitory. I'd better go take a look at the red building then. Chen Ji walked along the outer perimeter of the field before he reached the front door of the curious building. The building was as tall as the girls' dormitory, but it was only 2/3 the size. Once he got close, Chen Ji noticed how truly unusual this building was. There was a wooden sign that was placed before the front door, and 2 conspicuous words were painted on it with red ink: no entry. What is the purpose of this building? Curiosity is part of human nature. Chen Ji's desire to enter the building only rose after reading the warning sign. Something must have happened here several years ago. Maybe the red dancing shoes I'm looking for are inside. Chen Ji walked around the wooden sign and saw the front door was sealed up with 2 locks. I could break the door down with the mallet, but it'll create too much commotion that might attract the attention of the person who is following me. Chen Ji thus shied away from the door and walked around the edge of the building. There, he saw a window that was seriously worn. Even a large piece of the glass was missing. This can be my point of entry. Chen Ji extended his hand through the window to open the lock from within. To play it safe, he waited for several minutes to ensure that no one was inside before he jumped in. He closed the window and moved everything to how it was before. Chen Ji did not dare lower his guard as he surveyed his surroundings. He had landed himself in an artist's studio. The walls were pasted with the students' handiwork, and marble models sat on the shelves. This place does look creepy, but it is no competition for my haunted house. Chen Ji walked through the rows of marble models as he headed for the room's back door. He looked through the door's window and saw a banner with the words Arts Activity Center hanging on the corridor. Looks like I'm at the right place. Chen Ji pulled the door open slowly. Perhaps because it had not been used for a long time, the sound of the door sliding on its hinges was grating on Chen Ji's ears. Calm down, just leave immediately after you find the shoes. Since he was inside an enclosed building, Chen Ji switched on his phone again. The dim light did not bring him any comfort. If anything, it only heightened the fear in Chen Ji's heart. Chen Ji looked through the first floor rooms one by one. All of them were artist studios. In fact, some of them still had easels and paintings that had been left behind. This building has 4 stories, the dance studio I'm looking for is probably on another floor. Armed with his phone and the mallet, Chen Ji headed up the stairs. When he reached the 2nd floor, his heart started to race, and his back was covered with chills. Because as he turned to look down the corridor of the 2nd floor, there sat a wooden chair. This thing again. The muscles in Chen Ji's hand grew taut as he gripped the mallet even tighter. The chair was placed right in the middle of the corridor, so if Chen Ji wanted to enter the 2nd floor, he had to walk past it. The memory of what he had seen at the girls' dormitory was still fresh in Chen Ji's mind. These chairs seemed to have the tendency to get close to living humans. Hiding at the staircase, he started to hesitate. It has a back for people to lean on, and it looks different from all the other chairs I've seen in this building. It seems to have been moved here from someplace else, but why would someone do that? Upon closer inspection, the chair looked similar to the one Chen Ji had seen inside the girls' dormitory. It was likely one of the chairs the school management assigned to the dormitory rooms. Chen Ji used the camera on his phone to zoom in on the sign on one of the doors. It said something related to vocal training. The dance studio is not on the 2nd floor, it seems. Should I just head to the 3rd floor? But what if there's another wooden chair on the 3rd floor's corridor? If it starts to chase after me, won't I be blocked from both sides? As the creepy image flashed across his mind, Chen Ji decided to enter the 2nd floor corridor. The corridor was so shadowy that Chen Ji could not see the end. The doors on both sides were closed, and the windows were crusted with a thick layer of dust, blocking Chen Ji of the view inside. Chen Ji took deliberate steps. He did not think to hurry simply because of the possible threat from the wooden chair. In fact, for Chen Ji, the abandoned classrooms on both sides seemed scarier than the chair. I wonder how long it has been since a living soul stepped into this place. The dust on the floor is so thick, and I have no way of dealing with the footprints that I've left. If the person following me has also entered this building, I'll definitely be discovered. Even in this situation, Chen Ji did not forget about the hidden threat of the third party. I have get this over with as soon as possible. The light on Chen Ji's phone wavered as his arms moved. He inched closer to the wooden chair. In reality, there's nothing really scary about this. What can a wooden chair really do? Chen Ji walked around the chair, and it gave him the feeling that it was just a wooden chair and nothing more. Maybe I should take a closer look at it. As the thought cropped up in Chen Ji's mind, he had already put it into motion. He knocked the chair to its side, and it was then that he noticed the handwriting underneath the chair. Chien Yujio. That sounds like the name of a girl. In any case, the appearance of the name confirmed Chen Ji's earlier suspicion. The chair wasn't native to the activity center but belonged to a specific individual. When the school hosted large events, the management would have the students bring their own chairs. To prevent confusion, many would jot down their name underneath their chair. Does this mean there's also a name underneath the chair in the girls' dormitory? Chen Ji memorized the name. After some hesitation, he decided not to break the chair but placed it inside one of the empty classrooms. The longer I stay here, the more uncomfortable I feel. I'd better head up to the third floor soon. He returned via the route that he had come from and climbed up the stairs to the third floor. The corridor was empty this time. Chen Ji pushed open the door for some of the classrooms. The tables and chairs were all pushed to the back of the room, and parts of the wall had been repainted. It was rather obvious because the wall had two different hues. The school was already closing, so why did they waste money to repaint the wall? For whom is this for? Chen Ji's experience at Ping'an Apartments provided him with a possibility. It's probably to hide something. He used the mallet to peel at the paint, but weirdly enough, the wall behind the new paint was completely normal. There were no bloodstains or weird marks. No, there has to be something more than this. Chen Ji continued his tour of the classrooms. He realized that not all the classrooms had been coated with new paint. There were spots that had been repainted, and some of them were curiously close to the indoor piping. This building's water drainage system was probably updated before its closure. Chen Ji looked up at the piping and concluded, the classrooms on the first and second floor showed obvious signs of usage, but the classrooms on the third floor seemed to have been abandoned even before the closure. The tables and chairs were piled on top of each other, and there was not one piece of chalk left on the lectern. Some of the classrooms even had locks on them. Ghost haunting. Murder. Hidden security concern. There could be many different reasons for the sealing of the place, and Chen Ji could not pinpoint which one it was. He exited the classroom and headed up the fourth floor. When he took the first step, Chen Ji turned back to see whether the wooden chair was following him or not. It wasn't. When he reached the landing between the third and fourth floor, there was a rope tied across the two banisters of the stair that blocked his way. There was a wooden board hanging on it. Similar to the one at the front door, it said no entry. Naturally, Chen Ji was not deterred by the wooden sign. He picked it up and put it to the side before bending down to scurry under the rope. As he reached the fourth floor, Chen Ji noticed with his first glance that a faded room sign was hanging on the door of the room right opposite from him. The dance studio. After such a long search at the activity center, he had finally located the venue where the red dancing shoes had the highest chance of appearing. The layout of the fourth floor was different from the other floors in the sense that instead of individual classroom, the walls had been knocked out to form a large studio. After tearing down the seals and prying open the lock, Chen Ji pushed open the door to the dance studio that had been left unused for many years. The place appeared to have been forgotten by time. Things seemed to be how they were several years ago. The slick floor was filled with a thin coat of dust, and the room was suffused with a weird smell. The closest description Chen Ji had for the smell was heavy deodorant that had gone off after being trapped in an enclosed room for years. Chen Ji walked into the studio, sticking close to the wall. The studio was at a professional level, the wooden floor was waxed to accommodate the dance practice, and the walls were equipped with acoustic boards and panels to prevent the noise from disturbing the other classrooms. This is the first time I've seen such a large dance studio. Chen Ji used his camera to zoom in on the various angles of the room. The walls were mounted with bars that one usually saw in ballet classes. The bar's height was adjustable, and underneath them were a row of low seats that students could use for rest. On the other end of the room were 6 floor-length mirrors that were perfectly joined together. Each mirror was about 1 meter wide and 2 meters tall. I'd almost forgotten that mirrors are a necessary fixture inside a dance studio. Looking at the row of mirrors, Chen Ji sucked in a cold breath. He then noticed, situated right at the middle of the mirrors, 3 wooden chairs. 3 at once. Chen Ji bit on his lips before walking over to the chairs, his every action reflected in the mirror. Facing his own reflection in the mirror amid an empty dance studio at midnight, Chen Ji felt increasingly unsettled. Resisting the urge to break the mirrors, he toppled the 3 chairs to their sides, and like the chair he had found earlier, all of them had a girl's name written underneath them. Including the chair at the girls' dormitory, I've stumbled across 5 chairs already. If every single one of them represents a girl, then this means I'm dealing with the spirits of 5 girls. So, the question is, what has really happened to them? Chen Ji could not deduce the truth since there were plenty of clues still to be found. He returned the 3 chairs to how they had been before turning his head to look around the room. Due to the wall of mirrors, the dance studio felt larger and emptier than it was. The place is so clean. It has been probably cleaned more than once recently. There was no visible trash on the floor, and this was not good news for Chen Ji. Someone has messed with the place already. Hopefully, the red dancing shoes haven't been tossed out. Chen Ji moved away from the wall of mirrors to the corner of the dance studio. The wall was covered with various certificates and accolades. There was also something that looked like a results list. After taking a closer look, Chen Ji found an anomaly. The first place of the list had been crossed off with a marker pen. A list without the winner. Chen Ji found all of the girls' names, including Qian Yujio, on the list, but he could not find Zhang Ye. He moved his gaze away, and one of the pictures on the wall grabbed his attention. It was a group photo of 6 individuals. 5 of them were smiling brightly at the camera in a group hug while the 6th stood alone in the corner, quite a distance away from the rest. The photo had been manipulated to cut her out. If not for the snow-white dance shoes that peeked out from the corner, Chen Ji would have thought this was a group photo of 5 girls. These are all individual photos or group photos. Why isn't there a photo of the whole class? Chen Ji aimed his phone at the wall and snapped a photo. Then, moving forward along the wall, he soon stopped before a room without a sign. Compelled by curiosity, he pushed the door open and walked into it. The small room was equipped with a desk, a dresser, and a single bed. This appears to be the office of the teacher, but why is there a bed? The teacher needed to work the night shift. Chen Ji ransacked the room in the hope of locating the red dancing shoes. Unfortunately, the dresser was empty, and the drawers of the desk were filled with nothing but photocopies of winning certificates. Looks like the dance students here were all very talented, since they won so many prizes. Chen Ji picked up a few random pieces to look at, and one of them had the name of Qian Yu Jazz Group printed on it. Swan Lake Citywide Ballet Group Competition Champion. This means that they were qualified to join the statewide competition. This certificate was not pasted on the wall outside, and most curiously, the winning group was supposed to have 6 names, but the last name had once again been crossed off. It's the same as the result list. Chen Ji wandered around the room for a little while longer before leaving it empty-handed. Chen Ji's heart skipped a beat when he pulled the door open. The 3 chairs had moved from their original position to a spot closer to the door that he had just exited. It has started again. Chen Ji told himself to just ignore those chairs. He rushed to look for other clues. If he could not come up with any clues for the next 3 minutes, he had decided to leave the activity center. Using his phone as a light source, Chen Ji walked to the deepest edge of the dance studio before he found the door that said the girls' dressing room. According to rumors, the girls' bathroom and dressing room are where the yin energy is the most concentrated at any school. I'll need to be extra careful. He pushed the door slowly open. The dressing room was lined on both sides by steel lockers, and a long wooden chair sat in the middle. So, this is what a girl's dressing room looks like. This was the first time Chen Ji had entered such a place. He left the door half closed and walked into the room to pull open one of the lockers. A girl's school uniform was placed on the top level of the iron shelf. The design was different from other public school, it was more exquisite and prettier. The skirt barely reaches my knees, isn't that a bit too short? Chen Ji searched through the uniform's pockets and found nothing. He looked down the shelf and spotted a pair of white dancing shoes. The color is not right, not the ones I'm looking for. After closing the locker room, Chen Ji realized there was a small card pasted above the lock. It had the girl's name written on it. Now, this should make my life easier. Using his phone, he examined the names on the lockers, but after 1 round, he still had not found Zhang Ya's name. However, he did find a solitary locker at the corner, isolated from the rest without a marking or a name. The owner of this locker seems to have been ostracized by the rest. Chen Ji opened the door, and other than a dirty ballet dress that sat on the top level of the shelf, there was nothing else. No name and ostracized, who could this locker belong to? Chen Ji already had the answer inside his heart. He took out the dress and realized there were 5 candy boxes that had gone sour hidden underneath the dress. What are these for? Presents. Chen Ji placed the ballet dress on the wooden chair and picked up the candy boxes. Every box had been hand-wrapped, and each one of them had a girl's name written on top. Every name was different, but the handwriting was similar, so they probably came from the same person. These candy boxes were most likely the presents that she prepared. When Chen Ji picked up the last box, he noticed a picture that was placed at the bottom. The picture was the complete version of the picture that was stuck on the wall outside. On the back of it was written, "Congratulations to room 414 for winning the qualifications to enter the statewide competition." The front showed 6 girls. 5 of them were happily celebrating on the right side on the picture, while the 6th girl was standing about half a palm away from the rest. The girl had a tall figure, about 1.7 meters, and she looked like the main character of Swan Lake, graceful, pure, gentle, and beautiful. Even in the same picture, her supernatural grace put her apart from the rest. Could this be Zhang Ya? Muttered Chen Ji. He really could not reconcile the girl in the picture with the cruel and vicious red specter. It was a pure accident that Chen Ji mentioned Zhang Ya's name, but when he did so, the lockers in the girls' dressing room started to creak and rattle. It sounded like they were overloaded and were about to burst. On top of that, Chen Ji could hear an insistent banging noise coming from outside the door, like someone was trying to get in. Who is it? After shoving the picture inside his pocket, Chen Ji turned towards the half-closed door as his grip on the mallet tightened. He looked through the opening and saw that the 3 wooden chairs had formed a barricade at the entrance. "You really think I don't have the guts to smash you all into pieces?" Chen Ji's back was drenched in cold sweat, but he did keep his word as he walked toward the chairs with the mallet in hand. There was no other exit from the girls' dressing room. If he didn't clear a way out for himself, things would only get worse for him. Chen Ji's eyes wandered outwards as he tried to plan his escape route. However, his legs froze when his eyes landed on the wall of mirrors in the dance studio. The mirrors were reflecting the situation in the dance studio. The only difference was, there were 3 girls sitting on the 3 chairs. Teetering bodies, dirtied school uniforms, pale faces, and moving mouths like they were trying to say something. The 3 girls' faces were frozen in fear and terror, and their bodies seemed to have grown out of the wooden chairs. As his gaze alternated between the mirrors and the entrance of the girls' dressing room, a chill crept over Chen Ji's heart. Just not too long ago, he had tipped the chair over and observed them closely. Could that be considered my first intimate contact with a female? He shivered involuntarily, and his footsteps that headed toward the door hastened. As he wandered closer to the exit, the 3 chairs shuffled incrementally forward, and the lockers in the dressing room rattled slightly. After he mentioned Zhang Ya's name, things seemed to have changed inside the dance studio. The name appeared to be a taboo here. The mirrors can only reflect what is in the dance studio. Perhaps there's something even worse in the dressing room. I need to leave, pronto. As if confirming his thought, the steel doors of the locker started to creak like something was trying to escape from them. Holding the mallet in his hand, Chen Ji raced toward the door. With a running start, Chen Ji used his legs to kick the chairs that blocked his way. As he tried to rush out, he felt something pull on his shoulders. He turned to look at the mirror, and in the reflection, 2 slender and pale arms could be seen hanging off his shoulders. Without a second thought, Chen Ji turned and started his assault. Bang! The mallet landed on the back of the chair, causing a crack to appear on the chair. The scream of a woman reverberated in his ears. In the mirror, he could see the female student on the chair glare fiendishly at his back while her arms encircled themselves tightly around his shoulders like she was trying to press him onto the seat of the chair. What is the purpose of her doing this? Could this be some kind of evil musical chairs game where my soul will be eternally trapped inside the chair if I sit on it? The force on his shoulders gradually increased as pairs of pale arms latched themselves onto him, trying to pull him back into the girls' dressing room. To make matters worse, Chen Ji could hear shuffling from the outside corridor, and several seconds later, another wooden chair appeared at the entrance of the dance studio. My luck is always used at the worst possible moment. It chooses a time like this to make me popular with the girls. Chen Ji was at his limit. Instead of running away, he shifted to attack mode. With one hand on the chair's back, he used his other hand to swing the mallet around, laying waste to the chairs that surrounded him. When his mallet formed the first crack on the chair, Chen Ji had noticed that the expression of the female student shifted from pleading to venomous resentment. Through the shift in expression, Chen Ji came up with the conclusion that the chair should be their items of possession, similar to how Xiaoxia's family attached themselves to the rag dolls. Demolishing the items of attachment won't destroy them, but at least it'll be able to injure them. The force on him intensified. A newbie who had not experienced this before would probably have ended up as a willing lamb for this group of girls by now. Unfortunately, their opponent was Chen Ji. This proprietor of a haunted house had just spent a night at a haunted apartment with a serial killer. Chen Ji still knew fear, but after multiple incidents, his resistance to fear had been trained. Even when he was in fear or shock, he could still manage to make the correct decision, and his grip on the mallet didn't waver. Bang! Chen Ji smashed the chair and gripped the ends of the chair to swing at another chair. The image reflected in the mirror was a bit hard to describe in words, but Chen Ji did not have time to deal with that anymore. He used about 10 seconds to destroy one of the chairs. Just as he turned to aim his wrath at the second chair, he felt something grip his neck. Turning his head to the mirror, he saw a pale hand choking his throat. His opponent seemed to have given up the thought of pressing him onto the chair and decided to kill him instead. This shift in situation did not slow Chen Ji down. Instead, it only made him more vicious as he gripped the chairs and smashed them at the wall. As the chairs cracked, the force around his neck lightened. When all 3 chairs were nothing but splinters, the chokehold around his neck finally disappeared. Leaving these things behind benefits no one. Later, I'll burn all of you to help you seek closure. Chen Ji leaned against the mirror and tried to catch his breath. There were visible strangle marks around his neck. The fighting must have created tons of commotion. This will definitely attract the attention of the person who is following me. I'll need to leave as soon as possible. Anyway, the red dancing shoes don't seem to be here. This place was definitely haunted, so Chen-ji didn't want to stay at the dance studio anymore. The sound of the rattling of the lockers inside the girls' dressing room intensified, and that was not something that could be caused by a draft. Other than that, there were many other curious happenings like the sudden deepening in the colors of the walls and floor as well as the weird ping noises from the corridor that had gotten far more frequent. Just as Chen-ji prepared to leave, he almost tripped from someone pulling on his lower calf. Chen-ji turned to look at the mirror and saw the 3 female students were pulling on his leg, their fingernails almost pushing into Chen-ji's skin. Seeing this, Chen-ji also grew desperate. He smacked his mallet down on the wooden splinters, but no matter how hard he smashed, the girls did not release their grips on his calf. The weird noise in the corridor was getting closer, and the vengeful faces that were pulling on Chen-ji started to laugh maniacally. A heavy cloth seemed to fall over the dance studio because the light from his phone started to twist as the heavy stench that Chen-ji had caught a hint of earlier started to suffuse the air. There's a scarier presence hiding at this school. Chen-ji was spooked by the thought in his mind. He dared to come to this school so late at night mainly because he assumed Zhangya was the scariest presence this school had to offer. He was there to do a favor for Zhangya, so she had no reason to harm him. This is bad. Something seemed to have reached the door of the dance studio, and the stink in the air intensified. The 3 girls on the floor were glaring at Chen-ji with fierce and sinister expressions. Chen-ji's back was leaning against the mirror. He reached into his pocket, and his fingertip had just touched the doll when the weird noise at the door retreated with a speed that was faster than it was when it arrived. Then, the stink in the air slowly vanished. What happened? It feels like the thing outside the door was scared. All the weird noises disappeared instantly, and Chen-ji could only hear his heartbeat then. The light twisted at a greater degree than before, and the temperature in the room seemed to have dropped further. What is happening? The pulling on his calf had also disappeared. Chen-ji lowered his head and saw the 3 female students were hiding as far away as they could and looking at the space behind him with desperation in their eyes. Behind me. Chen-ji turned his head awkwardly around to face the tall mirror. The image reflected back at him was not his own but a woman in a blood-red school uniform looking down at him. Chen-ji was only half a finger away from the mirror, so he got a much better view than he would have liked. The elegant school uniform was dripping with fresh blood that caused it to stick to her body. Her face was hidden behind her hair, and the overly pale skin that was exposed looked scary. The cold light from the phone screen twisted, and Chen-ji could feel his limbs becoming frozen. He used every ounce of energy in his body to stabilize his lips before he could utter the girl's name. Zhangya. As if hearing Chen-ji's voice, the girl slowly raised her head. The curtain of black hair parted to the side, and an unblemished face appeared in his view. However, the mirror started to mist when her head was only raised halfway. She took a step forward, and she disappeared from the mirror. Where did she go? Chen-ji stared at the mirror and something even more curious happened. Cast from the phone's light, his shadow slowly stood up to stand behind him. Chen-ji could see that the shadow was about 1.7 meters tall. As the dripping sound of something like blood entered his ears, the shadow started to gain color. The bloodied uniform stuck to its body, and it was all red. Chen-ji stood where he was and did not dare move. The chilliness from his back had climbed up his spine to his brain. Right then, the red shadow took another step back to lean against his back. Standing back to back, Chen-ji's body froze. Even as he gasped for air, the sensation that he was running out of air would not go away. The specter has stuck to my back. Standing back to back was sometimes quite scary because you could not know who was standing behind you. Something cold seemed to reach for his fingers. Chen-ji did not dare turn to take a look. His frozen fingers slowly opened to allow the phone to slide to the floor. The light flickered twice before it switched off suddenly. Surrounded by darkness, the coldness behind his back continued to spread. Chen-ji couldn't even imagine the things that were happening to him. 2 a.m. inside an abandoned school's dance studio, facing a tall mirror, standing back to back with a red specter. In a way, I guess one could call this romance. Various thoughts crossed Chen-ji's mind. Something was holding his hand, and it made him feel increasingly cold. The hair of the girl behind him was moving as it entwined itself with Chen-ji's hair. What is she planning to do? My mission here is to find the red dancing shoes. I'll fail the mission if I am unable to do that before dawn. However, Chenji's body was frozen in place, and the only thing he could do was stare at the mirror before him. He did not notice it initially, but several seconds later, he realized with a start that fuzzy shadows were forming inside the mirror. He widened his eyes as the shadows started to become clearer. Wait, aren't these the girls who are trapped inside the chairs? Inside the mirror, 5 girls in clean uniforms entered the dance studio. Their outfits were completely different from what Chen Ji had seen earlier, so he suspected that the images he saw now were reflecting scenes that happened years ago. The 5 girls walked toward the mirror, laughing among themselves. Soon after they entered the studio, Zhang Ye showed up. Even though they were wearing the same uniform, Zhang Ye carried herself in a different way than the rest of the girls. She was carrying a bag in her hands. Chen Ji had seen this bag before inside the girls' dressing room. It was holding the 5 candy boxes. Zhang Ye seemed to be in quite a good mood. She walked into the dressing room with hurried steps, and several minutes later, all 6 girls came out wearing their ballet dresses. The situation had not changed much. The 5 girls were in their little group while Zhang Ye tailed behind alone. Not long after they started their training, the dance studio's door was pushed open. A female teacher walked in holding the Swan Lake winning certificate in her hand. She was talking animatedly with the girls, probably encouraging and congratulating them. That day was probably not a normal school day because Chen Ji didn't see any other students. The 6 of them were likely there to do intensive training to prepare for the statewide competition. The female teacher left after half an hour. After making sure the teacher had left, the 5 girls stopped practicing and started playing on their phones and chatting while lying on the floor. The only one practicing was Zhang Ye. Then, one of the girls said something while pointing at Zhang Ye. The rest of the girls laughed with the exception of Zhang Ye. However, she did not seem to mind it too much. After practicing for a little while longer, she stopped to rest. Then she turned to walk into the dressing room and came out with a bag of candy boxes. Zhang Ye passed them to the girls, but as one of them reached for it, she was stopped by one of the other girls, who was as tall as Zhang Ye. She said many things while pointing her finger assertively at Zhang Ye. She then ran into the dressing room and came out with a school bag. She pulled out several love letters from it. From the name, Chen Ji knew they were all addressed to Zhang Ye. This could not really be considered an argument because it was totally one-sided, dominated by the other girl who was weirdly agitated. Zhang Ye's candy boxes were thus rejected. She placed them back into the bag and left. Chen Ji thought that was the end, but not long after that, the door to the dance studio was pushed open again. The few girls were startled. Thinking it was the teacher, they quickly climbed up from the floor and started to practice. A fuzzy shadow of a male walked in. He was about 1.8 meters tall, slouching, and very large in size. The man said something to the girls, and only 2 said something in return to him. Chen Ji was confused by his identity. The girls soon returned to their practice, and the man entered the office. Later, he opened the office door and waved for Zhang Ye to come to him. Zhang Ye appeared like she did not know or even trust the man. She walked toward the office with hesitation and stood at the door but did not go in. The mirror could not reflect what was inside the office. However, about 8 seconds later, the scene on the mirror darkened as Zhang Ye ran out of the office. Holding his arm, the man chased after her while cursing all the way. All 5 girls in the dance studio saw this, but all of them sat where they were. None of them were willing to go to Zhang Ye's aid. Soon, Zhang Ye was cornered at a space that was nowhere close to the door. She screamed loudly for help, but it was not answered. The girls acted like they did not even hear her. The man said many unsavory things as he closed in on Zhang Ye. Zhang Ye's hands had reached the edge of the window behind her. There was only one exit left. Looking at the scene that played itself on the mirror, Chen Ji was suddenly reminded of the lines that appeared on the black phone when he won the love letter. Her eyes exposed, cheeks white as ash. The moment she fell off the building, she became the taboo of the school. Red dancing shoes and blood-dyed uniform, even her name became something that was only uttered in frantic whispers. The man studied the empty window closely but did not rush down to save Zhang Ye. Instead, he took several steps back to stop beside the 5 girls, who were in complete shock. Like and subscribe.